So the Lotus Emira, well, it definitely feels like a supercar just sitting in here. The bonnet drops straight down and I feel very low to the ground, and obviously you've got the engine whirring just behind your shoulder. It is somewhat practical though. You've got a touch screen, quite basic graphics and so on. You've got little apps and things you can play around with, performance pages and all that sort of stuff. This does have Apple CarPlay as well, which gives it a bit more color, I suppose, but this is meant for driving, obviously. So playing around with touchscreens and so on is not really what this vehicle is about. It does have a fully digital instrument cluster, and you can configure the inner display there to show different information, and then it changes again. The whole thing changes when you change the driving mode. So we've got Tour, Sport, it just changes around a little bit, and then a track mode, which changes it a lot. And you've got your live tire pressure gauge on the side, rev counter along the top there. We'll just leave it in Tour for the start. The normal road that I test vehicles on, the winding road, is closed today due to fire risk because it is quite windy and we haven't had rain for a while, so it's very dry. But anyway, I'll try and find some spirited roads and try and demonstrate what this beast is like in normal conditions as well as kind of spirited road conditions. Firstly, the gear shifter I'm not a fan of at all, because you kind of just, there's no mechanical feel to it. You sort of just hit the end and just wait for it to go into gear. Same as going back to reverse, you sort of just tap it and just hold it. It's, yeah, I don't know, I'd rather have something that's mechanical, clicks into gear, or a button that just goes bang, that's in reverse, bang, that's in drive. This just seems a little bit fiddly and like it's not connected to anything, which it isn't. There's nothing underneath there at all. You do have a bit of storage, but anyway, you get used to that sort of thing. And then you've got manual mode going left to right, which is a little bit odd. You do have the paddle shifters though. In my opinion, the paddles don't feel the best. They're kind of just buttons rather than, you know, traditional race-like paddle shifters. They're just like a simulator car game or something like that. They're just, yeah, not much movement with the paddle, but they're in a good spot, and the steering wheel feels very sporty and ergonomic as well. It kind of rises right up at the top there, and then you've got a flat bottom. We've got a rear view camera on this one as well. I love the start buttons, kind of borrowed from Lamborghini, with the little latch there, safety latch over the top. A couple of cup holders, and yeah, a little center console storage box. So despite being a super sports car, or you could call it a supercar, I guess, because it is mid-engine, the ride comfort is excellent. Like, this is a very dodgy country road, typical country road in Australia, coarse surface with little potholes and pits and so on in it, and this is just soaking up the bumps really well. I could drive this, you know, every day on a road like this with no problem. We've got some bigger bumps coming up soon, so we'll see how it handles those. But yeah, certainly on first impressions, it doesn't feel like a, you know, very hard-edged, hardcore sports car in terms of the ride. It goes straight into 7th gear. It does have an 8-speed dual clutch gearbox, and the economy is really good actually. I saw it drop down to about 10.5 with normal driving on the highway. I can't find the official rating. It's not on Redbook, and it's not on the Green Vehicle Guide government website, and I couldn't find it on Lotus's webpage either, but it'd be interesting to know the official average economy. I'll flash up some numbers now, maybe from overseas spec, but I think it is pretty good on fuel. 2-litre engine. It's not the high output version of the M139 Mercedes-AMG engine like in the A45S, 310 kilowatts. This is detuned, or it's just tuned to 268 kilowatts and 430 Newton meters, which seems about right considering this only weighs around 1,500 kilograms. So over these bumps and so on, very, you probably can't see it on camera, but yeah, awful road really, and this is just gliding over really nice. There's a bit of noise and a tiny bit of just shaking. There's a bit of a rattle coming from the door there, but overall not too bad considering the poor condition of this road and how serious this vehicle is. So, you know, this is a proper driver's car, track car, so there is going to be some creaks and rattles because everything is very tight, bushes and all that sort of thing, which uncovers or causes rattles and creaks. All right, we'll put it into sport mode now. Got some corners coming up, so I've still got it in auto mode, but you can just see there that downshifted, blip the throttle. I don't know if you can hear that, but the turbo is whistling like crazy, and you can actually back off and it goes like a little wastegate noise. We'll try out race mode in a second, it might be even louder again. So this is all automatic, it's blipping the throttle, downshifting quite aggressively over some bumps now. And it's still maintaining good composure, good comfort. Yeah, it's surprising how well it rides over bumps. Yeah, that turbo whistle is awesome. It's kind of old school, and it's fitting actually, because the Emira is intended to be the last petrol or internal combustion engine Lotus potentially ever. Although we'll have to see how things go with these EVs, because it seems like there's a big shift happening where people are not jumping to them as quick as they were, about a year ago or 2 years ago. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, this is intended to be the last internal combustion engine Lotus. All right, we'll try manual mode. Full throttle. Yeah, you can hear the turbo when you back off, which is awesome. That's cool. Downshifts, they're not super precise. Like, watch, I'll pull the paddle now. There's a tiny bit of a delay, but it does blip the throttle, so you've got to give it some allowance for that, I guess. Alright, we'll try the race mode. Or track mode, sorry. That turns the stability control off by the look of it, or puts the ESC into a track setting, so it will probably provide some slip and play. Same sort of noise. I think it did sneeze, the turbo sneezed a bit loud at that time, but it might be because I've just revved it up and backed off at the right time. Auto mode, little A with the gear shift. I'll just give it a bit of a kick down, or show the kick down for you. 40 k's an hour. Yeah, it definitely gets up and moves, that's for sure. Remembering I'm in track mode and we're still going over these bumps, and it's fine, it just soaks them up surprisingly well. I like manual mode a bit better, I think, because it just changes gear like very aggressively, and so it should. It's just nicer to have control over the gears. Awesome grip around the corners, as you'd expect. Yeah, it's really quick. The sound isn't as aggressive as I was expecting, maybe. I thought it was going to be really harsh noise coming into the cabin, but even in track mode, it's surprisingly refined. Like, I can maintain a conversation pretty easily. It's not like a Lamborghini Huracan or something like that with a screaming V10 engine, jolty gearbox, slamming home the gears. This is actually going through the gears quite smoothly, but still rapidly, but smoother than some more traditional supercars, I guess. The steering is beautiful. control, you know exactly what the front wheels are doing, as you'd expect, and it feels very light. Like, yeah, just then over those bumps you can see the steering wheel shaking. That's good, because it means it's giving me all the feedback from the road. That's what I want from a car like this anyway. But yeah, you can feel that it is very lightweight. It doesn't feel like a big cumbersome pig at all. Like, well, obviously it shouldn't, but you can just really feel that, and it kind of encourages you to take on sporty driving. Obviously on the track would be the ideal location to test this thing. In terms of the exterior design, it's a beautiful package. It stands out on the road. Everybody looks at it. In my opinion, it kind of blends some elements of Ferrari, particularly the front guards and the headlights, and then even the side intakes behind the doors here. They're kind of Ferrari and McLaren even, and in the rear end it seems to look a little bit like a McLaren in some ways. But you know, it's a supercar. All supercars kind of look the same, I guess, for a certain era, for a certain period. But this, yeah, it looks stunning, especially in white. It actually really looks, it really stands out. The turbo whistle just really adds that extra theatre and excitement, I reckon. Actually, I'll leave it in fourth and just see how it builds boost. Yeah, I hope you can hear that. It sounds pretty cool. Fourth gear, just, you know, really spooling it up, surging it up. I'll try a couple of little tests in a minute, kind of childish tests, I guess, but just when I was, you know, younger and watching car review videos, I'd always ask these questions. And the first one I'm going to do is just, what happens if you flatten the throttle off the mark, stability, traction control completely turned off? What happens? Will it spin the wheels? Will it just hook up and go? So I'll do that in a second. I'll also try some other little tests, kind of childish tests, but we'll just try them out anyway. Alright, nobody behind me. Let's see what happens. I think it will just hook up and go. Turn the stability control off, hold for 2 seconds. And that's off. We'll try it in automatic mode, and I'll just floor the throttle. Yeah, so it just hooks up and goes, doesn't spin the wheels at all. Kind of what you'd expect. It is a mid-engine vehicle, or sort of rear mid-engine vehicle, so all the weight is pressuring down on the tyres as you're standing there. Again, this is quite a bumpy road, but it hasn't crashed or, you know, any banging or anything like that at all. Even though I'm hitting some of these bumps with a bit of speed, it just absorbs the impacts really well. There must be a fair bit of wheel travel available too to take in that impact. Because yeah, this is a terrible road. I've driven down here, you know, hundreds of times, and other cars, particularly hot hatches, will sometimes crash and bang a little bit over the bigger bumps. Causeway down here. Even through that, it didn't, I've got a bit of popping and banging from the exhaust. It didn't even crash going through the causeway there. Get that exhaust popping again. got some storage in the back, although it does say maximum 50 kilogram limit, so it is reasonably practical. You can certainly take it for a weekend away or something like that. You've got some luggage space there. The biggest takeaway for me is the ride comfort is just so surprising. Even in track mode, it can take on pretty dodgy country roads with ease, which means you can enjoy a nice Sunday drive. You don't have to take it to the track every weekend. Also, it's not as harsh or as violent as I was expecting. The gear changes, even the noise, like it's definitely got a lot of theatre there with the turbo whistling, but it's not as harsh and as intrusive as I thought it was going to be, in both a good way and a bad way. I mean, you could always fit an aftermarket exhaust or something like that to really let it give off a nice bark, but as it is, yeah, it's quite livable, even if you wanted to drive this every day. The performance and the handling are exactly what I expected. So pure, organic, and lots of engagement through the steering. You know exactly what the vehicle's doing, and obviously the performance is excellent. The fuel economy is also surprisingly good, 11.6 at the moment, and I'm thrashing it around, which means you can spend quite a bit of time on the track, and it's not going to just gulp through the fuel. That comes back to, in part anyway, the lightweight nature of the vehicle. So being light in weight means it doesn't have to lug around, haul around some heavy mass. Obviously, lightweight means better performance, better braking, better handling as well. I've got the traction control turned off still. That was full throttle. It's not gonna catch you off guard and step out. You know exactly what's going on. You can feel it through the wheel. If it's got to kick out, I will know about it for sure. I feel like I would anyway. Yeah, through that section there's actually a bump right in the middle of the corner, and it usually disturbs the balance of vehicles as I go through. I just hit that with a fair bit of speed, and it just straight through, nothing wrong at all. No sort of feelings of insecurity or stability loss at all. Awesome work. All right, let's head out now to the private road and do some performance testing and see what it goes like. The other sort of inner child test I want to do is, will it do a burnout? Well, I'm on the private road now. First gear, stability and traction control is completely turned off. I know it won't do a traditional sort of burnout or brake job, as we used to call them in Australia, where you just rest your foot on the brake, apply throttle, get the tyres turning, and then you can just sort of modulate the brake pedal and just see how the wheel spin goes. Whereas this has got a dual clutch gearbox, so that means it's kind of on or off. As soon as you apply some throttle, that clutch pack is going to want to hook up and send power to the wheels. And if you've got the brake on, it's kind of working against each other. But we'll just try it out anyway. Get it into first gear. So foot sort of mildly on the brake. I'll just flatten the throttle and just see what happens. Goes into launch control. So the only other thing you can do, I'm sure it will spin around if you had a bit of room as well. You could do donuts, I'm sure. But I'll just do the launch control with stability and everything turned off, and it should smoke away off to a nice start reasonably well. Little bit of wheel spin, but nothing drastic. And the last inner child test that I want to do is, will it redline in manual mode? So will it actually bounce off the rev limiter? So I put it into manual mode, first gear, floor it, yep, second, third. Yeah, so we'll actually redline, which, it might seem a bit childish at first, but if you're a pretty hardcore track driving enthusiast, sometimes you want it to redline because, you're coming up to a corner, it's just about to approach sort of third gear speed, but you don't want to go into third gear because you're going to go back down to second straight away. So instead you might just bounce off the rev limiter just for a split second, whereas some vehicles that will automatically upshift, even in manual mode, they're going to shift up to third which means you've got to go back to second again and just waste that little bit of time instead of concentrating on setting the car up for the corner. So that is good to see. The Lotus will hold the gear and won't upshift automatically.